This is the DRF Players Podcast. Here are your hosts, Peter Thomas Fornatel and Jonathan Kinchin.
Hello and welcome to the DRF Players Podcast. I'm your host, Peter Thomas Fornatel, back with you. Happy to be back with you from the Brooklyn bunker. Not that the Langham wasn't fun, but we ended on kind of a sour note with that weird fire drill the other day. Thank you all for the cards, emails, and letters inquiring about my safety. I am fine. It turned out it was just some issue with the boiler. But other than that, it was a stay at the Langham that went off without a hitch. Been running around the world. Happy to be back in Brooklyn, at least for a little while. And happy to be joined once again by my fellow traveling soul. He's the people's champion. He's Jonathan Kinchin. JK, what's up?
What's going on, PTF? I'm good. I feel really echoey. I've cleaned my living area, and so there's no dirty clothes to help with the echo. It's just all a concrete. So it feels weird, but everything's good. What a kind of a slow weekend of racing ahead of us, but we'll figure some stuff out to talk about.
Yeah, we've got a few races to talk about. It's also every now and again that there's a weekend where we don't have that much to chew on in terms of racing stuff, especially with having done sort of our Triple Crown update, or as close as we do to a Triple Crown update on the previous show. But this is why, JK, I keep a notebook. And there are certain questions that they're like rainy day questions that don't really have much urgency or are tied to a particular event. We have some fresh questions to get to, and we also have some rainy day specials to bust out. So I think we'll do that today to supplement with the racing. I was talking about our traveling. You're getting ready to get back on your horse and ride. What's next on your dance card?
Yeah, I'm heading to the Prince of Keeneland. I'm going to head down to Mexico with the Prince of Keeneland just for the weekend. So he's got a situation down there that his family has, and so we're just going to go hang out and enjoy our weekend.
Will there be horses bet on over the course of this weekend?
If they're running in a circle, we'll find a way. I don't think they have a racetrack there, but if I can find one, I'll make sure I get there.
Well, there's always the magic of the internet and this, semi-limited, but not completely, there's still stuff to talk about. We've picked out 4 races to go over. I'm almost tempted to do the show in reverse this week, JK, where we talk about the racing there is to talk about, and then we sort of get into this other material. How do you feel about that? How do you feel about diving right in, or do you need a little bit more time to get acclimated before we do that?
PTF, I love curveballs. Whatever you need, I got you.
All right, why don't we start off? There was a stake in New York, wasn't there?
I believe that is the case. Yeah, it's the it's got a weird name that I don't remember.
It's an overnight
Franklin
stake.
Square. What is Franklin Square? Is that a place in New York?
There is a place in New York. I don't know if that's also a horse name. You would think, but my brain isn't firing on what that is. But these overnight stakes very often they'll just pick sort of a semi-random name as well. For folks who don't know, here, we'll do a beginner question. Here's our first evergreen piece for this show. What is an overnight stake? Define it as opposed to a graded stake.
An overnight stake. Oof, that's a good question. I think that the difference is, I guess an overnight is not graded, right? Is that the basic way to get around that question?
Correct. I mean, I think what it is something at the discretion of a racing secretary based on the horse population and the conditions of the horses. These are races that can sort of come up, and they're not necessarily they're not the perennial graded races from year to year, which are evaluated by the graded stakes committee, etc. And so they're very often can grow into races that become fixtures on the calendar, but they don't necessarily have to be the way that the graded stakes are. I think that's the right way to describe it. I'll take a look and see if there's a better definition when you have an opportunity to, or you can as well if we have an opportunity through the course of the show. Make sure we're not leaving out a critical definition there. But I think that's the general gist of it. This race goes as the third early in the card on Saturday, suggesting that there might be a favorite that is they're angling to leave out of the picks. Did you have a chance to take a look? Did you have a strong opinion?
Well, there's no morning line, so I don't know who that favorite is. I guess maybe it's Beautiful Buzz, but it feels like there's a lot of speed in this race, drawn inside and out. Not a strong opinion here, but I guess I would look for a horse like My Roxy Girl. Looks like she has a little bit of a finish in some of her previous races. So I would look for her to try to pick some of these horses up. She's cutting back from 7, so that's obviously going to create some natural finish. She's drawn outside so she can see what's going on inside of her. And then maybe a horse like Trini Ninja, mostly because I wanted to say Trini Ninja on the podcast, but a lot of these horses have competed have run for a tag. The horse that I picked ran for a tag. Beautiful Buzz ran for a tag. There's a lot of horses in here that are run for tags. Not a million, but Trini Ninja ran a maiden race and then didn't break his maiden, then popped her right into a stake. So obviously the connections are high on her. So Trini Ninja and My Roxy Girl, the ones that probably take the most attention for me here. But obviously I want to see what happens with the price. It's important to note, I think, with Trini Ninja. On debut, she was 99-1 and ran second.
It's amazing. What do you make of that usually? Is that do you see that as a positive or a negative, or does it just depend?
I think it's a connections thing, right? I mean, Bisnath Parbu and it's a Triniberg, and so it's. And I don't think it's. I don't think there's any pedigree to scream at you that this horse, or connections or trainer stats that are screaming out, hey, this horse is going to pop first time out. So I think that's probably why the horse fell to 99-1.
So because of the connections, you don't necessarily see it as a negative. Whereas, what if it's from brand name connections, a horse? I mean, you wouldn't see. Some trainers, you'd never see their horse go off that long. But what if it's a horse that just wasn't particularly bet, coming from a Pletcher and Asmussen outfit? I mean, again, I kind of think it depends whether or not you'd see that as a positive or a negative. Am I right?
Yeah, I wish we had something to give away, like a book or something. But I want to. It'd be a fun trivia question. What was the last time Pletcher was 99-1 or above? I'm curious when the last time that happened, if it's ever happened.
You got to figure somewhere. I just know that a lot of time you look at the way a horse was bet as a positive angle, but it seems like it's almost like it's a one-way train. Like when you see a horse who was bet, you're going to take that as an indicator that that horse was live, maybe look twice to see if there was a trip, if the horse didn't run, etc. When is it a bad thing? When do you see a horse that wasn't bet coming back for the next start and see it as a negative? There are times, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it's, I think really your question was for, and no offense, but like relevant trainers who take money, like a Chad or a Todd or a Mott or a Baffert or a D'Amato. These guys, when their horses aren't bet, or Doug O'Neill, if their horses aren't bet, there's usually an indication there that they're not set up well that day. And a lot of it's because a lot of people pay attention to those barns. So when they're working in the morning, you pay attention to the Doug O'Neills and the Bafferts because they have good horses. And I guess if those horses aren't training well, then they don't take money in the afternoons.
Yeah, the instance, and sometimes it could just be a question of form cycle. The horse needs a race, and if they're bet the next time, I'd think it okay. I guess where I'd get a little, I'd feel a little trepidation would be on a horse that wasn't bet, sort of a surprise win, stepping up in class. The hype hasn't gotten any better. People are just sort of betting the horse at that point because of the brand name connections coming off a win. A lot of times those are horses that just had something go right in the race where they wanted a price and can often be ones to oppose next time out. Do you agree with that idea? Like a horse that just things tripped out, pace collapse and the horse did well, and then maybe the hype of the connections drives the price down below where it should be.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you always, when you're trying to go back and look at stuff like that and tell that story, what happened on the day is important as well. If a horse wins at 99-1 because he's loose on the lead, it obviously tells a different story. I almost did that thing that you told me not to do, where I ask a question that I don't know the answer to, but instead I decided to talk about it, which is practically the same thing anyways. Hero, the horse that won at Fairgrounds I'm doing it anyways. I don't care. The horse that wired in one of the 3-year-old preps in the last couple of years, it sticks out to mind is like those types of trips can obviously lead to a horse getting into the winner's circle, and those are times that you want to evaluate how it was done.
I don't remember the name of the horse, but I think I remember what you mean. Was that a bias? Was that one a result of a bias, as I recall?
Bias, loose on the lead. It was like Hero of Order, or of course I'm not going to remember it.
Just Google while we talk. You can fake it way better than this. Let me tell you.
Well, I know, but I just felt like since you've been giving me a hard time about it.
You didn't give me enough to Google, so
Hero of Order. Is it Hero of Order?
That sounds like a horse.
Let's move on. Dorchenko. The POTUS Capper's favorite trainer.
A favorite also of podcast host Mike Hogan would often talk about Dorchenko horses. Not always in a positive, but I think he referred to that one as Dorchenko's mic drop moment, where it was like, see, it's okay to throw all this stuff against the wall because sometimes it sticks. I want to give props, by the way. I love this name, Beautiful Buzz, presumably a Rolling Stones inspired name. I love that. I want to talk about this race from a pace perspective, JK. Your study of horse racing form has been described in the past as a no closer zone. Here we have two horses who do appear like they're going to be well clear early in Velvet Trini and Beautiful Buzz, at least according to the Timeform US pace projector. Why is it when you see two horses like this that have the strong early numbers, the very weak late numbers, how do you evaluate how they're going to perform in today's race?
Well, it's tricky. This race it's a little bit easier. One of the things that made it easy for me to kind of toss them is that both of them are coming out of or have run for a tag before, which I think is a small indication of their quality. In both of those situations, that they ran for a tag, they weren't claimed. So the fact that they've shown speed in those races and were able to hold on for pieces, it feels like when they kind of go ding-donging against one another, it's going to set up for a horse that might have a little bit more class and quality. Velvet Trini on the rail with Paco Lopez and being from the same connections as Trini Ninja, you would imagine that one will go and Trini Ninja will take back and make one run. And so that's one of the reasons I kind of leaned in that direction.
I love it. It's a great description. Let's move down south to Florida, JK, and take a look at race 12 from Gulfstream on Saturday. It's the House Hope. It's a grade 3. It's the return to the races of Irish Warcry, and he's not the only brand name horse in here. Several familiar names. We've got Giuseppe the Great. We've got Malagacy. We've got Send It In for Todd Pletcher. A lot of interesting potential ways to go. Economic Model in here as well. Where did you see the winner coming from in the House Hope?
I'll be honest, this is really not me trying to escape a selection here. This is the type of race that I literally would feel like I was bringing a knife to a gunfight if I did not look at the DRF workout report in this situation. The good news is that we got clockers at Palm Beach Downs, so you'll know what's going on with Send It In. A little bit interesting seeing that horse at a one-turn mile when his biggest and best races were with that big Timeform US figure, 133 last year in the 1.25 mile Excelsior. So, we want to see what's going to happen there. Giuseppe the Great, obviously, is working at Palmetto, so there'll be works on that horse who had some interesting runs as a 3-year-old. Malagacy, with a nice comeback race for Todd, you'd expect him to improve. Tower of Texas is interesting. That's a horse that I remember used to run against my good old buddy Bobby's Kitten up in Woodbine in Canada. Obviously Tommy Massis was around for one of those runnings, I'm sure. And then Conquest Big E, another horse that switched hands a few times, but seems to maybe he showed a little bit of life in the Hooper last time. So this is definitely a workout report race for me. I got to see how these horses are doing, and then obviously I buried the lead on the two inside horses, Irish Warcry and Economic Model for Chad. Those are horses that are gonna take some money. I would want to bet Send It in this spot because I think he'll probably get ignored a little bit because of the distance. But he's drawn outside. He's got Johnny. If he's working well, Cindidin's the type of horse that I would like to take in this spot. The fact that he shows up here, it could be a prep. It could be getting him ready for some longer races down the line. But that's the one I want. And the one I'd probably be far, far away from is Irish War Cry.
Now, I was going to get to Irish War Cry. We'll put a pin in him and come back later. Send it in. 2 observations. One, leaps off the page that the best rated closer, according to the little preview screen in the Timeform USPPs. That's a positive. And also Pletcher, to me, I mean, this is not a guy who you think of as second off layoff. You think of him or I think of him as a guy whose horses arrived fully formed. So I'm definitely interested in what you're saying about him. Tower, Texas, of course, maybe the claim to fame is that day in the Woodbine Mile where it looked for half a second in the lane like he was going to get to Tepin. Didn't quite work out, but has run some big races for sure. But let's talk about Irish War Cry. This is a horse that you've never liked. I've been on in a couple of key spots, but I've also been disappointed by in a couple of key spots. Why your antipathy to this Graham motion charge?
Well, I hate the fact that he's drawn down inside off the break, right? So he's going to have to, he's going to. I'm not saying that Graham doesn't have this one ready to rock and roll. He's never really had huge gate issues, but at the same time, drawn down inside with all these other horses with speed, Tower of Texas, and then all of the, obviously the Todds. I just can't see a world in which he gets a good trip. If he clears, he's going too fast. I don't see him taking back at Gulfstream, eating dirt off the layoff, and then out finishing these quality type animals. And it's at a mile where he's shown some of his best runs. In fact, probably his best race to date was going 1.5 miles in the Belmont. So it just feels like he wants a little bit more ground. It doesn't feel like when they brought this horse back for his 4-year-old campaign, being a son of Curlin, they said, you know what? We can't wait to win the Howell's Hope. That's the goal. So it feels like there's going to be more for him down the line. Good to see Jose show up. I'd imagine Jose could have some fun with this horse throughout the year with some of the older horse handicap division. And I don't think I'm going to regret saying this out loud, but there's no real monsters there, right? I mean, we've lost all the monsters from last year. So, I guess West Coast is kind of the leader in the clubhouse for the older horses. Based on his run in the Pegasus. So we'll see what happens with Irish War Cry, but it wouldn't be today for me.
No, I agree. And I'll make the same point in the opposite direction about the trainer. Motion, a guy who I do think is much more of a circular race on the calendar well down the line as opposed to bringing them back fully formed. I'd expect and be surprised if Irish War Cry weren't a little short. You throw in your excellent points about race design and the fact that, there's a lot of brand name horses in this race, but none more brand name than Irish War Cry, who was a favorite in the Kentucky Derby or near favorite in the Kentucky Derby, and obviously ran a big second in the Belmont last year. Plus, he's always just been kind of an in and outer and a horse who's a little tricky to trust. So that really is in the backseat of reasons to maybe look in another direction today. I think you're looking at it the right way. Are we remiss in not talking at least for another minute, JK, about Economic Model? What are your thoughts on him?
I don't know. He's one of those horses I can't ever get right. Like I felt like he was a biased horse at one point. He was pace compromised at one point, and he just kind of always finds a way to get beat. I mean, he won an allowance race, and then before that, what was it? He won a 3-year-old stake at Belmont. I think it was the Easy Goer I think that's on Belmont Day. So I don't know. Yes. I just think he's a little bit overbet most of the time, and he's never really jumped up and really grabbed me. So I have no problem looking in a different direction. He'll probably be overbet again with Chad and the name and Clarabitch and Irad. So I'll look for a little bit more value in this spot.
Didn't he make us eat it in the Easy Goer? Didn't we have some early pick 5 single or something that he upset the apple cart for us back in that day? Or am I remembering the wrong horse?
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at that. Oh, I actually clicked the wrong one. I was going to say I was looking at that race to see who was in there. Oh, you know what? Maybe we did in the Easy. Maybe we had Rally Cry. No. You're right. 100% right. 4 to 5 Cupid.
Oh, there you go, Cupid, your favorite horse, who gets another call on the podcast. See what I did? See what I did there, Scott Calder? That was just for you.
Yeah, Scott. How about Cupid running last, huh? Huh? How about that? How about that arrow in the heart?
Oh dear, that's terrible. I'm going to see to it that horse steps on your foot when we go see him. When we go to Keeneland in April and hopefully make our trip out there, I think Scott may be gone at that point back to his native New Zealand for his big job that he's going to be taking up. But one of the horses we definitely have to see in the flesh is Cupid, and I want you to apologize to him face to face for all the trash you've talked about him on this show, JK. Any shot of that happening?
Yeah, I'll hug him. He'll probably bite me, but I don't know if he's a rowdy guy. He's a tappet, so he probably is a little rowdy. But I'd give him a hug if he'd hug me back.
All right, we'll keep that in mind. Let's move out west. I should have said at the top of the show we're going to be slightly truncated today as well, simply because of JK's travels, where we're doing this as live on Friday. We're pretending it's live as you listen, but we're really recording on Thursday. And as a result, both of us have a lot of stuff. We've got to get decks cleared for the weekend. So with apologies, this will be more like a 50-minute type DRF Players podcast. But I think it's a good week for that. As we said, there's some interesting racing, but nothing like – it's not like we're giving the races short shrift, as you can hear, as we move on to the West Coast and Santa Anita. Now, let me ask you this, JK. You've been very anti-turf lately. People have noted, what's up with JK and the turf? How are you going to bet racing in 2018 if you don't like the turf? I even heard one person say. And it's not an unreasonable question. Are you still okay with betting these downhill races that I know you've had a lot of success on? And what's the difference?
Pete, I'm considering getting a tattoo on my neck of the downhill turf course. There's nothing that can separate me from that. Whether they can run down the hill on glass, and I'd still participate. No, I love these races. These are my favorite. I feel like I have a good idea of what it takes to win these races. Obviously, I'm not always right about it, but I like it so much that I've focused on it a lot, and so and I'm actually excited about this one. This is the start of my my out of the gate double that I just recorded about 15 to 20 minutes before we started. So I love a horse in here, and I don't think the horse is going to be. There's about 3 other horses I think will take money. So I've always wanted to see What a View run down the hill. He's a forwardly placed miler, which is obviously one of those things that the type of horses that really excel down the hill. And there's not a ton of pace in here. I think he'll get a perfect trip. Conquest Tsunami is going to take money off of the last win that had blue pace figures got down the hill with the 117 figure. Calculator always takes money. And then obviously the horse drawn to the outside, Stormy Liberal, the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint winner, is going to take some money. So I actually think that What a View will be a price that you can work with. I think he'll be finishing off of that cutback, off the layoff. And I'm looking forward to watching him down the hill.
It's a great spot. I agree with you. Came up with the same horse. Not terribly exciting, but I think you make good points. This is a horse who, under other circumstances, I think if you just looked at the raw dope of this race without names of horses and names of connections, What a View would be a lot shorter than What a View is going to be against this field as it's constituted with the information all there. And to me, those are the kind of situations where you can sometimes get an edge even at the lower end of the price spectrum, because value isn't about, oh, it's a big price on the board, it must be value. Value is about a horse's actual chance of winning versus his price on the board. And I'm with you that What a View could be the value here in the Grade 3 Daytona down the hill at Santa Anita. Let me ask you a serious, I was joking about it before, but it is a serious question. Why do you think you're able to find value in these down the hill turf races when you seem to feel like you just don't come up with the value horses in turf, other turf races, turf routes?
Well, I think I can find the value horses in turf routes, right? I think it's just more of a factor of like you're at so much you're at the mercy of the trip when it's a 2-turn grass race because of ground loss and whatever. I think down the hill it's because there's the right turn, left turn. It's kind of an equalizer. If you're in the bad spot for that first right turn, then you're in the good spot for the left turn. And so I feel like it's harder to get a terrible trip down the hill than it is on a 2-turn turf race. So I think that's part of the reason. The other thing is that I feel like there's a lot of value in the down the hill races because horses that are cutting back from a mile. I mean, I think a lot of people know about it, but they typically are higher prices than they should be, and then the horses that are stretching out from 5 are typically lower prices than they should be. So there's value, there's an inherent value that's in the middle there. So I think that's a lot of it.
I agree with your second point. I don't really agree with your first point, just because they do go so fast and the race is still so short. There's time to recover, but don't you feel like a bad trip going 6.5? I mean, you check at the wrong point, you're just done like that. Or is that not what you're saying?
No, I mean, if you check, you check in any race, you're in trouble. I think it's more of like a ground loss wide situation, and the pace, the importance of pace in 2-turn grass races, the influence that it has on the winner.
That's a great point.
If you're a closer and they go 48, you just don't have a shot. If you're 3 wide, they go 48 and you're wide, you got no shot. And you're a closer. And so I think that the paces are usually honest in these down the hill races. Sometimes they're not, but and I just think, and I don't think that the ground loss is as significant down the hill, because like I said, it's right turn, left turn. So if you're in a position where you save ground on the right turn, then you lose a little ground on the left turn. It's the opposite for the horses that lost ground on the right turn. You know what I mean? So I think it kind of cancels each other out.
Well, and how about this? A scientist will probably chide me for using the term incorrectly, but I almost feel like downhill and then a turn, there's like almost like a centrifugal force aspect that allows that wide run that we see working down the hill that often would be the end of you in a 2-turn race. But I think the most important point you made is the fact that there are so many more what I would call truly run races down the hill. And I feel like part of what frustrates you and others about the turf routes is how few of them are truly run because of the slow paces early. I feel like you're much more likely to have a modest pace down the hill where you can win from anywhere, or they go too fast. And a lot of players love races where horses go too fast, because then often you can, by being able to judge a horse's finishing ability, you can find a horse who's logical, who's a price, as opposed to the cloud, what my friend William Murray, the late great William Murray, used to call the cloud cuckoo land horses, what I've heard you call the senseless long shots, JK, who win sometimes in turf routes when the race doesn't go according to form. Concur?
Yeah, no, it's just more about probability, I think, for me, and not from a pure mathematical standpoint, but just feel. I just always feel like I'm getting a terrible trip or a bad pace scenario in 2-turn grass races. I don't feel that way down the hill.
All right, let's move on to another race down the hill that goes as race 10 at Santa Anita on Saturday? This is another stake of the overnight variety. What'd you come up with here?
What do you think I did here?
What do I think you did here? I don't know. Is there a 4 to 5 shot you could single and move on?
There's no morning line, so no. I'm gonna pick Baffert on the grass.
Wait, really? So I would not have gotten that right. I would have gone. My serious answer, looking at the race, would have probably been, a Bendable or a horse like that who seems to, have some reliable form. But you're going with Baffert. Tell us why.
Oh, I mean, because he's talked to me, so my fandom is just like growing. I can't.
How is it possible? You already wear the man's wig around your house and dance a jig on a Saturday. How can the fandom grow? What more, him getting a restraining order against you is your fandom growing. So that worries me, JK.
One of my favorite things to do in racing is like to tell the story of a horse and or to guess the story of a horse, right? Like to try to work it out in your head. But like, what is the story on the 5, Samba Inc.? Like, why the heck did Juddmonte send this horse to Bob? And then they're running. It's not a dirt horse. They're not running on the dirt. So that doesn't make. Why wouldn't they send this horse to Chad? I mean, the horse is a Grade 1 winner by 7 in Argentina on the turf, and they ship him out west to Bob. I just find it to be interesting. Bob runs him on the grass. He's been training well on the dirt. He ran a bullet 1 of 73 going 5 furlongs, and then he had the bullet the race before that. The horse clearly has talent. He gets Pratt. The horse looks like he might be special. Obviously, we're going to look at the workout report, and then and then Bob brings him and puts him right in a state. There's a lot of things about it that make me say and then obviously Bob proved me wrong the other day down the hill when he won during the NHC. He had that horse that won down the hill. So I'm going to give Samba Inc. a look. If I was playing multi-race bets, I wouldn't be singled there or anything. Obviously, you got to use or consider Bendable, but I'm also going to use Gliding By and Malibu Stacy. Gliding By was on to two-turn filly for Josie Carroll. Richie Baltus ran her going a mile and an eighth. Last time, I think that the cut back down the hill could be something that makes her happy, and I think she'll be a fair enough price. And then Malibu Stacy for George Weaver. I've talked about it on the show before. I think Weaver's a very underrated trainer, and maybe not even underrated, but just under the radar. I think that Weaver has been getting some horses to run. He gets Corey Nakatani, who I love down the hill, so I would consider those two as well. It's a tough race, but the Baffert thing is really interesting to me, and I'm gonna break one of my rules, which is no Baffert on the turf, and I'm gonna take a look at this horse Samba Inc.
Let's talk a little bit more about the possible rationale for why a turf horse for Juddmonte would go to Baffert. There's a world in which you'd be looking at one that they think the horse could do damage on this specific course. I mean, another idea that pops to mind but doesn't pass the sniff test is maybe they thought it was a horse that would be more needing firm ground, a little bit more of a question mark with where Chad's running for much of the year, a little bit more certain. But you look at the horse's form on heavy and soft, and that doesn't seem to be the case, though. Not having watched the tape, who knows? Maybe the horse clearly didn't like the ground and was still so good that the 7 and 14 length victories were still in the offing. What do you think when you play that game of why is this horse here? What do you think the number one? It's not just as simple as always special send him to Bob. What other factors go into it?
I'll be honest with you, it's bizarre to me. I mean, I guess maybe grade 1 winner on the turf. Let's send her to Bob to see if we can get a graded stake on the dirt. But it's like Juddmonte's not really into that. I mean, they're into breeding. They breed to race. They don't breed to sell. So I don't know. It's bizarre. But it's so bizarre that it's leading me to having to pick the horse. Like I just don't get it. And it's not like I mean maybe your point is right that they want the West Coast firm situation, right? But like you said, the form doesn't suggest the horse needs firm. But at the same time, like Juddmonte doesn't really send horses out west to anybody else. It'd be different if it was like, out east they'll send horses to Mott and to Chad. So I don't know. It's a bizarre thing to me, but I'll definitely be watching. I'm interested to see what happens.
Yeah, it sounds very cool. It could also be, here's my new pet theory, just as we brainstorm about it. Baffert, he's a different kind of trainer than he was a few years ago. He's way more patient, and it's quite that this is in a plan, running well dirt, or to see how she does on dirt with almost audition to be a future of a horse we used to call Aragate. Wow, just brainstorming here.
Yeah, I mean, maybe so. It's really interesting to me. I wish I was out at the track. Ask Bob.
Oh my! Stop! Stop! Oh my God! It's just disgusting.
I knew you'd like that one.
Yeah, it was good. Okay, we've got, we probably go 15 more minutes here, and we've got a worth of questions sitting in front of me. We'll start with the silliest question of all, and then we'll proceed back to some racing stuff, because I feel like we're in-depth enough there that we indulge the person who wanted to know if we've been drinking lately. I'll answer for JK. He strictly Tito's and soda, yes?
No, I mean, the truth is I don't really I don't really like the vodka soda idea. I'm just not like delicious. I don't like tip and go, oh, it's delicious. It's just useful to make you all extra fat with a lot of extra crazy and stuff. Drinking, it's old fashioned. Usually when I go to a restaurant, I'll check out their version of an old fashioned, and I need to take
a dangerous game. That can be a dangerous game.
It can lead down some dangerous roads. And I've also I like the porters. I'm getting I like to sit down at a bar and say, do you have anything that's like malty? That's like I learned that from a friend of mine who who hangs out in Brooklyn with a beard and knows a lot about beer. So, yeah, that's those beverages.
I mean, I've been, for me, it's always messing around. I've been trying a lot of since that trip to Scotland in June. I've sort of rediscovered my love of single malt Scotch. Been sort of rebuilding that library, and I like that because I drink it responsibly. You sort of sip a little bit while looking at the PPs, as opposed to ordering like somebody I know, like 18 vodka sodas in a row while being at the racetrack. Sipping the Scotch is a little bit more refined. But I'll go the beer direction too. Since you mentioned porter, I had a good one last night, and the cool thing about this brewery, on the way from New York City to Saratoga, they're called Suarez Family, and they're mostly known for their lagers and pilsners, but they're doing some other fun farmhouse stuff. And I actually had a porter of theirs last night at a great beer bar I've been enjoying near me in Brooklyn called Gold Star Beer Counter. Suarez Family Porter. It was like this inky, almost licoricey, but not quite, didn't cross that line, but just like really strong and good. Their beers cross the border good. And I'll put in a plug for a brewery that's much closer to you than me, JK, who I've had a couple of collaborations with. And it's a brewery called Jester King. When I was out in California, I found out my favorite bottle shop out there, Sunset Beer Company, a collaboration Jester King did with the Colonel, who are like hands down my favorite London brewery. Love the Colonel stuff when I'm over in London, which I will be again soon. And that was good. That was like a really light, farmhousey kind of beer. And then last night at Gold Star Beer Counter again, there was a sour that they did in conjunction with the brewery in Southern California, sort of like this wheat sour that had a ton of flavor. Is that worth a visit when I come out finally and make good on my threat to visit you in Austin? Should we make it out to Jester King?
Yeah, absolutely. It's like out kind of in like Dripping Springs. And it's kind of in like West Austin, and I've never been there, but apparently it's like kind of this cool outdoor space, like next to like a really cool pizza spot. So a bunch of outdoor seating. So I've heard it's cool, and I'll reserve the trip for when you actually finally come to see me. I mean, geez, I've come to you like a number of times. I guess this is a one-sided relationship.
I'll get there. It's just hard because you don't have. I mean, it's live near Lexington or it's not like you live in Cleveland or Belmont or Santa Anita.
I'm 30 minutes away from Main Downs and an hour from Retama Park.
Well,
one of them doesn't run, and the other one is there's no grade 1. Say that.
Well, it will be fun to cross off the list, at least the ones where there's actual racing. We'll get it done. Maybe next winter. Maybe the equivalent weekend of this past weekend when Perrin has school break. We'll finally make the trip down to Austin. Producer Craig chimes in, probably reminds me I'm remiss in not mentioning when we're talking about sour beers, Toolbox. Terrific brewery in North County. When I was out there, I had a bottle of a sour there called Troubadour this most recent trip. But Craig and I had a really fun day out at Toolbox. That was one of the brewers, JK, that our friend, brewer and owner Ryan Exline tipped us off. Another one to check out. This next question, spend the rest of the show on. We'll just the flow. If we will. If not, we can do quickly. We can get to some of these other excellent ones that we have. Simple. Your top 5 reacts. I've been saving this one.
In order? It's hard for me to do it in order. No, it's not. I'll just do it. All right.
You're going to go 5-1 or 1-5?
My brain. I got to flip my brain now because I was going to do it the other way. Okay, I'm going to go 5-1.
Either way.
5-1. Del Mar.
Okay.
Churchill. No. Churchill, Del Mar, Keeneland, Saratoga, Santa Anita. Bang.
That's pretty good. We've got a lot of the same ones. Obviously, Saratoga first for me. I would think that any list, my general thought on this would be that any list that didn't include Saratoga, I mean, any top 5 has to have Saratoga, Keeneland, and Santa Anita, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I mean, I'm sure there's a guy that would say Finger Lakes or or Hawthorne or
isn't that guy you, Finger Lakes?
Finger Lakes. I've never been there, but I did have one of my greatest fruits of all times when I bet that Finger Lake horse and I was yelling Finger Lakes.
People looked at you like you had 6 heads more than usual when you were doing that particular route. Any others that who's getting short shrift on this list?
Honorable mention from a character standpoint is Hawthorne. In a staff standpoint, I think that they have one of the greatest staffs in racing. They're very horse player friendly, and I get the vibe that a lot of them are horse players, and so I enjoy that about Hawthorne. I think Arlington's beautiful. The times that I've been there, it's a pretty cool experience. Belmont is nice. It's cool, but it's kind of a little too wide open for me. And but the backyard and the paddock area at Belmont, I think, are pretty cool.
That's right. That's the underrated way to do Belmont is not on stakes day, but on just sort of a regular day. The picnic in the back, looking up at the Ivy. I'm hoping with this Belmont Renault and the hockey team coming in. I don't even think we've talked about that yet, but whatever they do, I hope they preserve what's really good about the backyard, and I hope that the space that gets ceded to the new venture is not connected to that. It's such a big property, but I'm glad you mentioned that one.
What is the racetrack that you have not been to that you need to still attend?
In the USA?
In the USA.
That is a very good question. I mean, I've been around at this point. Let's see. Where? I probably don't go to Churchill enough, but I mean, I've still been there a bazillion times, so that can't be it. I've never been to Arlington for a regular day of racing. I've only been for the Breeders' Cup, so that could be on the list. I've actually never done Hawthorne, and between the folks I've met from there and all horse players seeming to be pleased with the way they get treated out at Hawthorne, that could be on the list. What comes to your mind for that question?
Just a quick backtrack. I do like Monmouth a lot too. Really cool place. It's fun to take the ferry down, the boat down, or even the train down.
The parterre boxes at Monmouth are phenomenal. If you
Monmouth's great. I haven't, I haven't heard like that. It's like some glamorous place, but it's like a racetrack that I've placed wagers on that I haven't been to yet. Is Tampa. I've never been to Tampa.
That's good. No, and a lot of people do rave about it.
Yeah, I think the Duke goes like often. I think he's a fan, not often, maybe once a year. So I'd like to check that out. And I've never been to Golden Gate. I've had like 2 almost trips there, and I've heard that it's pretty cool. I heard the view from the men's. I've heard the view from the men's bathroom is $1 million view. Like they actually built it the wrong way, where when you're facing away from the track, you're looking at the Golden Gate Bridge. But if you're facing, if you're looking at the races, they built it the wrong way. So
those careful camera shots get plenty of bridge view in from there. That one does look good. Going to Golden Gate for the Turf Festival. Another thing I'll mention that I just absolutely loved, and I'm hoping you're going to join me this year, though I have a feeling you might be at Keeneland because it's the same weekend of the contest. But Oaklawn, the building left me. The building was sort of like, okay, it's a winter racetrack. Like, I'm not going to judge on a curve for being a winter racetrack. It's absolutely fine. But what was awesome was walking out on the infield was just wonderful bucolic surrounds and having the invite to the 10 Strike Racing party last year. And now, JK, that you're a member of 10 Strike Racing, I think you should seriously consider flying your plane into Hot Springs, doing the Arkansas Derby, and then doing a night flight. If your plane's in the shop, you could take Luxair or something, and doing the direct from Hot Springs to Lex Vegas for the Keeneland tournament on Sunday. Any shot of this?
There is a shot. I would like to make that move happen. I would like to make that move happen. So, I went to Oaklawn last year for the first time, and it was more of just like a cheeky check it off the list thing. We were in Memphis with 10 Strike, Mr. 10 Strike himself, with Marshall Graham and Clay Sanders, and we went from the We went from speaking at Marshall's class at Rhodes College, which was a blast with myself, Travis Stone, and Nick Tamero. And then we hopped in the car and head over, went to the dog track on the way. And then I was at Oaklawn for like 5 races, long enough to lose a $1,000 voucher.
And when you say lose a $1,000 voucher, you don't mean bet it and lose. You mean physically lose a $1,000.
Yeah, physically lose. Then I hopped in an hour-long Uber over to the airport and then flew to Las Vegas. So,
yeah, that doesn't even count. We got to get you back there for real. And I don't know how many days they open up for. I assume it's just the big days. Probably worth checking their website. I would try to plan to go for Rebel or Arkansas Derby or sometime when that infield's open. Then I still guess you got to get lucky with the weather. But that was a really cool racing experience that I'm eager to repeat. And how you end up getting invited to lecture at a university class, when I, the failed academic, have never been asked by Marshall Graham. I don't know how you worked that one out, JK.
I think it was just we were trying to meet a quota, you know.
I'm tempted to just throw the show right there, but we got about 3 more minutes.
Yeah, I mean, you had the Asian guy, you had the white guy, the Italian guy, just throw in the brown guy, boom, everything's covered. We're good to go.
And you're kind of a twofer too. You can cross, South Asian and African American off the list in one fell swoop.
You see that? I'm here for the people.
I wonder if we'll be invited back next week for the DRF Players Podcast. Here is one that I meant to ask last time, and I couldn't find it, and I found it now, and we'll close with this. It's a great question. This one comes from Drew. How does your view of value change as the field size in the contest goes up? For Drew, he says, in matchup contests, it's all about picking winners. If you have to beat 20 people, you still need those winners, but you also need a separator. Your thoughts, JK?
I've had these questions a ton of times. And I know it's an annoying response. I literally just try to pick winners, whether it's a head-to-head or a 300-person contest. I try to pick winners because, obviously but it doesn't matter. I don't care if I'm playing against one person or 600. If there's a horse that's 3-1, and I think the horse is going to win, I'm going to play him. If there's a horse that's 6-5 and I know the horse is going to win, I'm going to play him. If the horse is 6-5 and I kind of like him, but I'm also interested in the 10-1, I'm going to play the 10-1. I don't care if it's versus one person or versus 600. I've won some of the biggest seats that I've won playing online have been 12 race contests where I scored $58 and won, because there's just days where, the bomb stuff doesn't happen. And so yeah, I play, I dictate, I let the card and the races carded and the races selected do my picking for me. I don't overthink that.
So just to clarify,
it's the same reason why I don't say, oh, my target score today is this.
Right. Because your target score changes, because you don't really have a target score. You just have target horses, and you're going to play those horses. But just to clarify, you're playing on 2 all-in tournaments on DRF Tournaments, tournaments.drf.com. One is a head-to-head. One is a Horse Player World Series qualifier, like the one we have this Sunday.
Exact same picks.
Where it's 1 in 19. That's it. Boom. You answered the question.
Exact same picks. Exact same picks.
You are rare in this regard. You reckon? There
might be the smallest instance where, for instance, I'm trying to think of a race we talked about. I wish there was something a little bit. I wish we had something a little bit stronger. But think about a spot where, like, say it's Belmont Day, right, in 2015, and Pharaoh is running. I would take Pharaoh in the head-to-head, but I would probably take, Frosted or Materiality in the big contest. I don't know why I felt like I needed to go all the way back to 2015 for that example, but and I'm also very impressed that I remember that Materiality was running. But yeah, I mean but that's only that. But very often, not very often does that happen. I usually do the exact same thing. In fact, I use the copy feature, which is great on DRF tournaments. I just copy the picks.
Look at you being a company man. I like it. Yeah, I would say for most people, though, the approach Drew suggests is right. But I think there can be a little bit of a hybrid. Those strongest horses where you can just get points. I think absolutely fine to play on both. I do think some people have the attitude, especially maybe and this might be a bit of a logical fallacy in a matchup contest, but I do think it's the way the brain works. Somebody will think about a race along the way and hope that at that point you'd have the protection of Faro. Of course, in a matchup contest, it doesn't matter. The points mean the same whether they're in race 2 or race 9. But I do think some people's brains just work that way.
Yeah, but like I said, in a 700-person contest in Vegas, I played a 4 to 5 shot, and that was the difference between making the cut and not making the cut. I believe in the power of $4, and so I'll take it when I can get it.
Someday, when we get approval to do the Bet with the Best contest edition, JK, I'm going to have you write a chapter. I think we're going to call it The Power of $4. You like it?
Yeah, I mean, you're going to have to pay me with pizza or adult beverages, one of the two.
Oh, as many porters as you want, JK.
Before you start volunteering me to do your job for you, how about you come visit?
Well, that could be the excuse. We could work on the chapter together. We could do it Mike Maloney betting with an edge style, where you dictate to me, I sort of mesh it into something, and then you rewrite it completely. So we could do.
If we ever wrote a book together, I envision it being like we're in a hotel room. There's 2 queen beds. I'm laying with my legs crossed, with my eyes closed, and you're over there furiously typing, and I'm just talking.
It's happened before. Just ask, talk to Maloney, talk to Chris Jericho. These are things that have happened. Speaking of Maloney,
Nick Tamero tells a funny story when he used to public handicap and write for I can't remember what Saratoga Bets or whatever it was. He was sitting in a hotel room, because Nick he used to work hard on those things, and he was laying in bed dictating to Pat Cummings. And he fell asleep in the middle of dictating to Pat Cummings his thing, because Pat was writing it for him. So pretty fun.
That's amazing. I've never had the person doing the talking while transcribing fall asleep. I did once fall asleep while transcribing. Very embarrassing, but I managed to keep the gig somehow. All right, we're just about out of time. I do want to put in a quick plug for Betting with an Edge, simply because I just received another box of signed books. We were out for a while. The supply is replenished. If folks are looking for a copy, hit me up at Looms Boldly on Twitter, podcast@drf.com. If you're looking for JK, for your questions, etc., comments, at UT Big Hair on Twitter. With that out of the way, it is just about our witching hour here on the show. So I'm going to thank Jonathan Kinchin. I want to thank Willie Nile for providing our theme song. For more of his music, check out willienile.com. Thanks to Travis Stone, our voiceover artist extraordinaire and the voice of the Kentucky Derby. Thanks to producers Craig and AJ. Most of all, thanks to all of you for tuning in, for downloading, for listening live via Spreaker. However you consume the show, you make it fun, you make it great. Keep up the good work and keep us motivated and rocking and rolling throughout the year on the DRF Players Podcast. We will be back on Tuesday, I believe. Are you back from Mexico by then?
I am. I'm back. I hope I'm back.
God willing, and the creek don't rise. Back on Tuesday. Peter Thomas Fornatal here. May you win all your photos.